Okay, welcome once again to online tutorial for philosophy courses. Okay, so today we'll be looking at introduction to ethics, and our topic is moral issue. So, moral issue, the idea of moral issue arises when we are faced with decision making on what should we do or how should we do it. Okay, so there are questions we asked on which action has a moral implication or not. Okay, so let's take for example. Okay, so let's take for example that you have to make a decision between buying an iPhone or Android. Do we think this pose a moral issue or has a moral implication? Or let's say you want to eat, you're feeling hungry, you now say, where should I go? Is it to Yashabi or Yadayo? Does this pose a moral issue? Okay, so we definitely will answer no. Okay, how about uh, if you, I'm going to slap you? A statement like that, does it pose a moral issue? Or a lecturer telling a student, I'm going to fail you, does that pose a moral issue? Definitely will say yes. Okay, so now moral issue can be identified when our actions, words, or intention affects the well-being of others, okay, either physically or psychologically. Okay, so that is when an issue becomes a moral issue, when an action, words, or intention affect the well-being of others. Okay, and then sometimes those some actions that affect our own well-being could also be a moral issue, like suicide, right? Like drug abuse. It's so when it affects you, right, you it also pose the questions on moral implication, that it has a moral implication. Okay, so those are what we can consider as moral issue. Okay, so now there are actions that are morally prohibited, there are actions that are morally required, there are actions that are morally permitted. Prohibited action could include a 13-year-old drinking alcohol, right? It is morally prohibited, right? Because is not up to that stage where he can handle such kind of liquor and lifestyle, right? Morally required action could include a father being obligated to pay the school fees of his kids. It's morally required that you do that. Morally permitted could include morally permitted could include uh, and when you go to a party, you are permitted to drink wine and so on. So those are alternatives of moral actions. Okay, so now when your decision making does not clash with the above alternative, then we cannot say it is a moral issue unless it is affecting the well-being of others. That is when you are permitted to drink wine at the party. A party is not a moral issue unless it's going to affect the well-being of other, right? As long as it doesn't clash with another alternative like morally prohibited actions. Okay, so now that is on identifying moral issue and what issues are. Okay, so the next one is moral evaluation. Now in morality, we evaluate, right, which actions are right or wrong. We also evaluate people. That is when you say, this person is a bad person, you are evaluating that person based on what that person action, right? We evaluate people to be good or bad based on their action, and then this is because our moral judgment is based on moral principle. Now let me explain a bit. When we say David is a bad person, we are passing a moral judgment, right, on David, right? Now based on what David stole Toller's book. Okay, now David, therefore David is bad. Okay, so that judgment on David is based on his kind of action, and the evaluation of kind of action is under moral principle. Okay, so that is why every moral judgment is based on moral principle. So the action of stealing someone's book is is bad under moral principles. Okay, the an action of helping others is good under moral principles. Okay, so the kind of action is evaluation of kind of action is under moral principle, and evaluation of the human right individual action is based on moral is a moral judgment rather. Okay, so now when we evaluate people right, based on what should we evaluate them? This is because sometimes when you say uh, David committing adultery is very bad, someone will ask you that who gave you the authority to claim that what David did is bad? How do you know that what David committing adultery is bad, right? So now for us to say this, we are trying to be biased by saying that morality has an authority that guides it. Okay, so this is rather very unfair, because it is not every situation that has an authority that governs that action. Okay, so rather when you ask a philosopher that what justifies moral action, what can we use to evaluate moral action, they will ask you what's the reason for such action, right? What is that action justifiable according to uh, a good reason, right? Okay, so now so when we are evaluating moral actions, we should not appeal to authority, rather we should appeal to justifiable reasons for such action. Okay, so like someone could say using an iPhone is bad. Okay, now you in a normal sense using an iPhone is not a moral issue, right? Now so a philosopher will ask what is your reason for saying using an iPhone is bad? So if that person cannot give a justifiable reason, then that word using an iPhone is bad is baseless. But if presuming that person can give a justifiable reason, okay, then we can say okay, this poses a moral issue, right? Then we can evaluate it as a moral issue because the person could give a justifiable reason. So in moral evaluation, we should always appeal to a justifiable reason. Okay, so now after moral evaluation we have moral arguments, and this is just like our introductory part to logic, where for every statement or argument there are always premise and conclusion. Okay, so now moral arguments include reusing the principles of logic in inferring our conclusion about a moral action being good or bad. Now let's take an example of this statement or argument. Now premise one says Raymond cheated in the examination. That's premise one. Premise two then says it is wrong to cheat in examination, right? Then premise three, the conclusion says Raymond cheating in the examination is wrong. Now we have been able to infer the conclusion Raymond cheating in the examination is wrong from the premise and the from the both premise. Okay, so that is an example of a moral argument. Okay, so now in moral reasoning or justification, what we have to consider is what are the facts, right? What is the fact in that above argument? The fact that Raymond cheated in the examination. The second thing we have to consider is what moral principles apply. Now the moral principle is in premise two. It is wrong to cheat in examination, right? So that is a moral principle on its own, right? So then we also have to consider what the word actually mean. That is what the word cheat mean. Okay, and cheat mean to violate rule in order to gain advantage. So that is the meaning of to cheat. Okay, so we have been able to know what the facts are, know what moral principle apply, and then understand the meaning of the word cheat. Then we could now infer our conclusion that Raymond cheating in the examination is wrong, right? So that is an example of moral argument. Okay. Okay, so let's take another example. Premise one says suicide is self murder. Okay, the premise two says murder is immoral. Right, now we can infer the conclusion that therefore suicide is immoral. Right. Okay, so that is another example of moral argument. Okay, so thank you for listening to. In the next video, we'll be taking a look at uh, ethical universality and relativism, and then finally the divine command theory.